Good morning, Malta and Gozo, and welcome to another episode of Lovin Daily. I'm your host, Sam Vassallo, joined by Julian Bonici, and here are today's headlines. So, Malta reacts to Keith Schembri and others arrested for corruption and money laundering. Meanwhile, a minimum quota for local music on Maltese airwaves has been proposed. A father has been arrested on child pornography charges for allegedly filming his 4-year-old daughter. Cystic fibrosis patient Mandy Vella to receive life-saving medicine after public campaign. And lastly, former captain Andres Schembri speaks out on the state of Maltese football. Now, before we get into our headlines, we're in second lockdown now, summer's just around the corner, so why not get into shape right now? So Loving Malta teamed up with Bulletproof to give you a fully online fitness bootcamp. It starts March 22nd, it runs for 4 weeks. It's for fitness backgrounds of every different kind. It basically costs €50. They have a whole range of different activities, from like HIIT to yoga to fitness for kids, mobility, dance, CrossFit, whatever tickles your fancy, you name it, it's there. It's going to be held with leading trainers, including Yasmin Z. Stevens, and the first 100 people to sign up get 2 free shakes from Dr. Juice. So get on it.
Yeah, so on to our first story. So one item is still dominating the news agenda. It's the arrest and charge of Keith Schembri and 10 others on corruption, money laundering, and a host of other charges. They were all charged late on Saturday night. Well, actually it started about 5 p.m. and continued right up until the evening. But yesterday's news basically was dominated by reactions from all sorts of people. But obviously, one person who stood out true to form really was former Prime Minister Joseph Muscat. For those of you who don't know, Joseph Muscat and Keith Schembri are described, as almost best friends. They worked together. He was his right-hand man, and they were sort of the architects and behind their political success, starting way back, from 2008, leading up to 2019, when they both resigned in disgrace because of the arrest of Jorgen Fenech. For Joseph Muscat, in his short statement, referenced the claims, but quite well, unsurprisingly, made absolutely no reference to Keith Schembri, didn't even mention him by name. Muscat did take the opportunity to name Times of Malta, who are obviously one of his harshest critics, along with, sort of saying, that this all happened under the PN government, without ever referencing, the ties to his party, to his, his leadership, and how it sort of stretched over into his administration. For those of you who don't remember, for those of you who don't know, these arrests are part of 2 magisterial inquiries. They both concern Schembri. The first concerns transfer between Schembri and former managing director of Allied Newspapers, Adrian Hillman. Allied Newspapers runs the Times of Malta, and some suspicious transactions with Brian Tonna, who's of Nexa BT. He was also charged as well. Till now, Allied Newspapers sort of has responded to the claim, saying sort of whatever happened probably happened behind their back. Just a refresher, 2 of their former managing directors are going to be charged in this case. The main question on everyone's lips, though, at the moment is sort of what's going to happen next. Just sort of to explain maybe a little bit for now, we'll just sort of wait until magistrates are chosen to lead the compilations of evidence against each of the parties involved. Until then, it seems that they're going to be waiting in Cordine, to the time being, till they get another bail request in front of court, so stay tuned. There's a lot happening, a lot of different cases. Actually, this morning, Follow Live, Vince Muscat is testifying against the Maxar brothers. It's been full of reactions, and there were even reactions from some of Malta's top officials, right, Sam?
Exactly. So, of course, it's been an explosive weekend, to say the least, when it comes to justice and corruption. Prime Minister Roberto Bella said, that the latest developments confirm that Malta's institutions are working, and he also said that Keith Schembri no longer forms part of parliamentary group of Labour. He effectively washed his hands on the situation. Meanwhile, on the opposite in the opposite party, opposition leader Bernard Grech He applauded the developments, but he said that he was sure that Jorgen Fenech wasn't the only mastermind in the case in the murder of Daphne Caruana Galizia. Of course, Caruana Galizia's son Matthew also spoke out. He said he compared Keach Kembri, being transported to Corradino prison as the Santa Maria convoy of our generation, which essentially was a boat that kind of came to the refuge of Maltese just after the war. It also got the international spotlight with Reuters and The Guardian reporting on it, just to show how big of a deal this is. So on to our next story. So there is a minimum quota for local music on Maltese airwaves has been proposed. So this is part of the cultural strategy for the next 5 years. It was proposed by leading cultural policymaker Tony Attat, who spoke to Lovin Malta about what they're setting out to do to improve the status of the artist in Malta. One of these proposals is instating a 15% quota for radio stations in Malta, and it would be exclusively for local music. So it could be, songs in Maltese, it could be just produced in Malta, made by Maltese artists, and essentially the idea is, more exposure means more gigs, means more revenue, and a better chance of being an artist full-time. Now, of course, it's been applauded, especially by artists in Malta, but they warn that, at just 15%, it could mean that there's the same few artists on rotation, and so this should actually be upped up to like 40%, which is the case in France.
Aren't you sick of the word quotas? I think I am. It seems like the government's only solution to every problem, at least every social problem they can't actually solve, is let's put a quota on it. I mean, why won't the government really look at maybe investing some money and time to actually improve the talent of Maltese artists who maybe could actually earn the right to be on our airwaves? I don't know about you. I don't feel like I'm spending 15% of my drive listening to mediocre Maltese music. I mean, it should only be there to give exposure to the talented ones. So maybe focus on that and stop thinking a quota is a solution for everything, because at this rate, I think I'm gonna, if I hear the word quota one more time, I swear I'm gonna get COVID voluntarily. On to our next story, quite a shocking and well, quite frankly, disgusting story. 3 men were arrested over child pornography charges yesterday. All 3 men were aged in their 20s. However, the most shocking, I think, by far, concerns the case of one man, a 26-year-old, who filmed his 4-year-old daughter committing sexual acts. I mean, what a perverse thing to do. And to make matters worse, he shared that material with third parties, hoping that maybe he'll get some material in return. It's absolutely sick stuff. Thankfully, the men have been granted bail, and hopefully they'll never see outside of a prison cell. But obviously, the issue itself, unfortunately, I suppose, sheds a light on the rampant issue of sexual abuse in Malta. Lovin Malta has written about it ad nauseum, and really it seems like nothing is being solved. And most crucially, most cases of sexual abuse are time barred. For those of you who don't know what time barring is, basically it sets a time limit for when police can charge someone with a crime from when the crime is committed. In Malta, this also applies for cases of sexual abuse. So it could possibly mean, that somebody who suffers sexual abuse as a child decides to come forward in their 30s or 40s and then can't find any legal avenue to do it. The government has already removed time barring on corruption, thankfully, because it means maybe Keach Kembri won't get away from his crimes. Why don't they do it for sexual abuse? Please listen out, Justice Minister. We've been waiting for this change for so long and it still hasn't happened.
In fact, this case comes just as Lovin Malta published its 6th article to do with sexual harassment. Lovin Malta had conducted an anonymous survey where nearly 1,000 people came forward with their stories of sexual harassment. And this weekend's was about sexual harassment when it comes from family members. Now, dozens said that they suffered abuse. One woman said that she was raped by her uncle. Another said that she was forced by her father to expose herself. And unfortunately, only one of them reported actually going to the police and actually, having the case closed and the perpetrator, fined or imprisoned. So this is a message, as you said, to our government. We need to remove this time bar and support victims as much as possible. On to our next story, a little bit more positive now. A cystic fibrosis patient, Mandivella, is set to receive this life-saving medicine after a public campaign. Now, the 26-year-old Mandivella had a video conference with Robert Abela where he confirmed, Prime Minister Robert Abela, where he confirmed that this life-saving medicine, which costs tens of thousands, is going to be put on the government's essential medicine list, and she will be able to access it along with 19 or so other cystic fibrosis patients. Even our president, George Vella, said that he was happy that his interventions worked. This is really great news, but unfortunately, this sheds a light once again on the fact that patients in Malta with rare diseases have to, play the dog on TV and beg for a dignified life time and time again, and rely on charity. I think it's hopefully with this case we can actually look at the crux of the issue and solve this and stop making people have to beg to have a decent life.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, right? There are countless of other people like Mandivella in Malta who suffer from rare diseases and need access to life-saving medicine, at least affordable access to life-saving medicine. And too often, unfortunately, they have to either go to the news or go on social media to create a big furor about the issue to finally be heard. We have a free medical system in Malta, we have amazing doctors, amazing medical staff, who do such an amazing job. Let's hope, let's try to treat, every person in Malta regardless of their condition. On to our last story, the former captain of Malta's national football team, Andres Kembri, has spoken out on the state of Maltese football. Speaking exclusively to Lovin Malta, he sort of highlighted, how a mediocre training environment, inadequate coaching staff, and a lack of foresight sort of is preventing players from reaching the next level. For those of you who don't know, Andres Kembri is probably Malta's most successful football player ever. I think it's fair to say. He's had quite a lot of success abroad, playing across Europe, and even eventually landing in India. He actually had quite an interesting career. His proposal, essentially, for Maltese football, at least what he complains about, is that Malta has too much of a decentralized system. We have all of these football nurseries scattered across Malta, and all our resources and our experts are being spread rather than using them to create a centralized spot, focusing on really the best athletes in Malta to give them a fighting chance to play abroad. Practically every Maltese person is exposed to football, and yet we still can't make at least slight improvements, on a national team front. I'm not saying we have to compete in major competitions, but at least compete in the qualifications for them. So Andres Kembri also at least gave a bit of an insight of how maybe he was different, to all the other people in his age group, his generation, who didn't actually cut it abroad. And sort of he spoke about, how lucky he was to have that sort of 24-hour support from family members and coaching staff. And a family, who taught him the resilience, that it takes to go play abroad. It's no easy feat, and people have to sometimes make sacrifices, which I don't think maybe some Maltese football players are ready to do. That's it from us for today, and remember, have a day full of loving.